Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 96, A Coward's Redemption. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. Welcome back to the Stories Told podcast. I'm author E.W. Barnes, and with me is author Michael Grayford. And today we're talking about this story told in the movie Edge of Tomorrow. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And what's new in your writing world?
New in my writing world is nothing at this point. I moved to a new town and it was far away, and I didn't have a chance to actually see the house in person. So we're just kind of going off the pictures, and we could tell it was like, okay, this is probably just going to be a temporary house. We'll live there for a while we look for another place. But then as soon as we got into the house, we're like, yeah, we can't stay here.
Oh, that's too bad.
The heat wasn't working, and there's a lot of issues with it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we had everything moved in. We didn't unpack. We just kind of lived out of our boxes, like, we're in a hotel as much as we could. And then luckily, we found another nice place in fairly nearby in a decent town. Yeah, within a week we found it. We applied. We got accepted. We moved our stuff. So we lived in that other house for 1 week, and then we were out.
Wow. That's a lot of upheaval in a short period of time.
Yeah, so a lot of moving. We still have stuff at the previous place because we still have the lease there for a bit. So yeah, we're going to have, we still have more stuff to move, but we're mostly settled into the new house, which is good. So that's been all that packing and unpacking and moving and stuff. That's been my month.
I would find it hard to write under those circumstances too.
Yeah, it was challenging to focus on anything else, unfortunately. But what about you? What writing have you been working on? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's life. Life happens. You just got to deal with it and you move on. I, on the other hand, am writing again. I'm so excited. So excellent. Working on the next chapter of Meridian, which is the third book of the Adventures of the Adventures of the Empyrean Guard series. So yeah, that and I want to move forward even faster than that. And my offspring I've been, as you know, I had the laryngitis earlier this month. Haven't really been feeling great for the last month. I'm starting to actually finally feel better. Whatever this was hung on for a while. And I was kind of looking forward to having the month ready to go to work really hard while my kid wasn't in school anymore. But instead I spent that month not feeling well. So, oh well. Kid goes back to school this week at the time of this recording, and the schedule's not too bad. So I see a lot of writing in place, and I'm already starting that writing and it's feeling good. So fingers crossed that momentum increases and stays in place.
Yeah, that's great.
So what interesting stories have you come across lately in books, movies, or television? Have you had a chance to engage in any entertainment?
See, during the long move, I was able to listen to an audiobook. So I was listening to the next story in Brandon Sanderson's Skyward series, which is a young adult sci-fi series. So I was listening to book 2 and part of book 3 on the way. I'm really enjoying that series. I really like the first book and the second book, and I'm in the third book now. And I really like them. So I would definitely recommend those if you're interested in that kind of thing. If you like YA-ish stories and sci-fi, they're very good.
I like YA, like PG-13 level action. I'm not that crazy about coming of age stories, but yeah, is it like a coming of age story?
There's a little bit of that. I would say it's more action based.
Okay.
It's more about the plot and kind of the characters working her way through that. It's not really much in terms of teen angst kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it works better. And the pacing, I think, is really, really good in these books.
Good. Okay, great. What I have been doing, I actually decided that while I was not feeling well and dealing with a little brain fog and not a lot of energy, I decided I really missed Doctor Who. So I got 9 and 10 DVDs for the series for the 9th Doctor and the 10th Doctor.
Oh, cool.
And I've been loving it. And it's just so hokey but fun.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yep. And I finished the Fablehaven series. So that's done.
Okay. Yeah. How did it wrap up for you?
I think it wrapped up fine. There were questions I would have liked to have answered, so that there was some stuff hanging. However, like right after the last sentence in the last chapter, the next thing was the author saying, "I'm not writing any more in this series." So, that's the prerogative of the author. I thought overall it was fine. I think as a kid's book, I think it's a great series. As a kid's series, I think it's a great series and a lot of fun. I understand why my kid enjoyed it. So, yeah.
I was watching a discussion with Brandon Mull and Brandon Sanderson. They were talking about writing into the future, and Brandon Mull said either the series he's working on now or the next series was going to be his last thing that he wrote. So he's wrapping up, apparently. At least that's what he said then. Who knows?
So he's kind of retiring?
Yeah, from writing at least.
Okay, good for him. I mean, that's great that, he sees an endpoint for this particular career, and maybe he's going to start a new career.
Yeah.
And go in a different direction. Interesting. Okay.
And he asked Brandon Sanderson, is like, okay, how much do you see? It's like, are you wrapping up? And Brandon Sanderson's like, I've got like 40 different ideas for series that I can do.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Other thing we've been watching is The Good Place. We've been kind of binging that a little bit because we've enjoyed it. There are some parts of it that I think are less good than others, but overall we're invested enough that we want to see how it ends. So we've been watching that. I think that's it. Oh, there was something else. We started watching what is it called? It is an anthology series on Amazon. So it's science fiction short story shorts, like video shorts.
Yeah.
An adult animated anthology series featuring original stories set within the worlds of some of the world's most beloved video games.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was also an encouragement by our offspring, who is a gamer.
Yeah.
And some of them have been really interesting. Some of them have been loose stories enclosing a whole lot of animated violence. We have not watched the whole thing yet, so we've watched 5 or 6 of them. Okay. So there's like a total of 15 of these short. They're only like 15 minutes.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check
so it's been really, check it out. Are you ready to talk about Edge of Tomorrow?
I am.
Okay, let's go. Today we're talking about the story told in the movie Edge of Tomorrow, and I will read the short synopsis on IMDb. A man fighting in a war against aliens must relive the same day every time he dies until he can find a way to stop their power source with the help of an elite soldier. Did you like this movie?
Oh, yeah, I love this movie. This is one of my favorite sci-fi action stories. And it has Bill Paxton, who's also in a couple of my other favorites, like Aliens and Terminator. Just coincidentally. Yeah, I really like this movie. I think it all comes together really well. This is one of the best produced movies, I think, that's been made. It's just so well done overall. But focusing on the story, I think it's pretty good. I mean, it's nothing super surprising. Like once you kind of get the idea of what's going on, it's more about the execution of it. But they do some things really well. I think they have a great setup right off the start with the sort of as the credits are going. There's an opening montage It shows us what we need to know, right? It gives us the backstory in little snippets. We see the alien invasion. We see the armor technology that they have that they're working on. We're introduced to the main characters with Tom Cruise as the reporter guy and lead general of the European forces and the Angel of Verdun. Like all these things are introduced, and they don't bother really explaining it or putting any story to it. You just see these snippets and you kind of get a sense of what's going on. And it's perfect. It's enough for what you need to get right into the story. So I don't know if that's how it was originally written or if they just edited it down to that because they realized they didn't need to explain it. But whichever way, it worked the way it came out, I think. Because I wasn't, you're not lost. You know what's going on pretty quickly. And then once we get into the actual story, we immediately learn about Tom Cruise's character, Major Cage, and we see the setup for, the weakness that he has to work on, his cowardice, his lack of desire, shall we say, to go into battle. And there's just so much good foreshadowing in the opening part of the story for things that we're going to see again and again. Like the Bill Paxton character says, tomorrow morning you will be baptized, born again, right? It's like literally what happens. And the fiery crucible in which only true heroes are forged. Like he's going through that day after day after day after day. So I thought they set it up really well. A lot of good stuff in that opening section. And I like the development of the relationship between the two main characters, given that the day resets every day, right? And she doesn't know what happened the day before. I think they handled that pretty well. And we see kind of how it forms over the course of the story from his perspective. And even though it's reset for her, because she has gone through this before and she's had somebody like that on the other side that she's had to watch die over and over again, we see that she can relate to it. So it gives them an ability to bond over that shared experience, even though it's not something she's experiencing during Tom Cruise's timeline. So I thought they handled that pretty well. And then I liked at the end how he learned about, all of his fellow soldiers, and he was able to finally convince them to join him at the end, and how they all stepped up for that final push. I thought it was great how they introduced the concept of, once you get this blood transfusion, you're going to lose this power. And then, of course, that's going to happen at some point. And then you see when it does, you're like, uh-oh, this is the last day. You better make this work. I thought they set that up really well, too. And, of course, at the very end, we see, with his transition from his selfish coward to the selfless hero at the end, we see him kind of transforming over the course of the movie. I thought they did that really well. So I love this story. I thought it's just so well done. Some great humor, some great action scenes. I think everybody who's involved in this movie just played their part and pulled it together really well. So yeah, I definitely like this movie. There's a couple of things I would improve, but we'll get there. I'm more interested in hearing your thoughts on what did you like about this story.
Well, the first thing I want to say is actually how much I appreciate your mentioning the Bill Paxton sort of foreshadowing piece. I actually did not clue in on that, except for when he said something about this is redemption. The being in battle is redemption. I did hear that, but the rest of it I didn't. So well done on picking up all that stuff, because you're right. It is exactly what is going to happen to this character. I was focusing a little bit more on how this character is so unbelievably unlikable. I mean, he was not a character that was easy to relate to. He was a coward. He was sleazy. I was resisting liking this character so much. And I was thinking, okay, I'm the audience. We don't like this guy. Why are we sticking around? And I realized that it came up from a couple of things. One was one of the things that you pointed out about how great the opening was. It was fast, but not too fast. You could follow what was going on for the most part. It was realistic. It was engaging. And it actually was, interestingly, put us in a position of hope right at the very beginning. Usually when you see a movie like this, we start like in a terrible place, or the world goes bad shortly after we get introduced to your main character. And then everything goes to heck, and then it's a matter of struggling and fighting your way back up. Instead, this story starts off with, we have this new equipment that is going to change everything, and the world is hopeful, and we're going to win, and here's the Angel of Verdun who like totally wiped out the bad guys with this new equipment. We're starting in a place of hope, which is unusual for this kind of movie, and we're starting with this terrible character. So I was thinking, okay, how are they keeping me engaged? And I realized the reference to the Angel of Verdun kept me engaged. What's her story? What's that about? Right? Okay. And then when you realize that you've got this unlikable coward and you've got the Angel of Verdun, you're thinking, okay, this is going to be a redemption arc where she's going to train him how to be a better person, which is not exactly what happens. So right away, I've got this expectation that shortly thereafter gets completely subverted because within a few scenes, she's dead.
Yeah.
The other thing, I like that you mentioned Bill Paxton. I had Bill Paxton with an exclamation point in my notes here. I think that was another really smart thing that the filmmakers did, was bringing in a character that is a science fiction character, or has an actor who has been in science fiction movies and is recognizable and beloved from those science fiction movies, to help pull in the science fiction fans who are going to recognize him. He's different in this role a little bit, but for the most part he is. But I thought those two things are what kept us engaged as we're following the journey of this person that we do not like. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And then, of course, she dies, and then he dies, right? And in a moment, all your expectations are completely subverted. What just happened here? And then we get into the real meat of the story, which is he dies in a particular way that enables him to reset time every single time that he dies. And I thought, wow, this is cool. And the way they handled that with the montage of repeated attempts and how he gets slightly farther and slightly farther every time by remembering and learning, so well done. There was never really a down point to this story. The pacing was always really good, very fast, but not too fast. You didn't get lost. Just boom, 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 boom. Keep up, because we're going to go here. And it's really well done. You know, when I was sitting down and looking at this from a writer's point of view, I was like, this is brilliant writing. I mean, it is really brilliant. And we get new twists all the time. So we don't just fall into a pattern of, okay, now she is training him and he is learning to be a good person, but he's also training her because he's the one with the memories of what's going to happen. So it's this mutually balanced relationship instead of, she's the mentor and he's just following along, or vice versa. They are balanced. They both have responsibilities here. They both have authority over each other in some ways. And I think it's really cool. And then every single time you get a new twist, you get a new twist, you get a new twist. And so I thought it's just really well done.
Yeah, I agree. And you bring up a good point with the character at the beginning, because he's not the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Jason Statham kind of hero that you're like, okay, this guy's going to come in, he's going to kick butt. It's like very much the opposite of that, right? You don't like this guy. He's a coward. He wants no part of this. And Tom Cruise plays that brilliantly. He really sets up that character where you're like, man, this guy, like you said, he's kind of this sleazy guy who's who's cocky about his position.
He tried to blackmail the general, really sleazy. Exactly. It was just gross.
Yeah. But then it gives him so much room to transform.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought there was a lot of really, really clever stuff like that.
I agree. We like this movie a lot, but is there anything that you would have changed as a writer?
There are a couple of things fairly small, at least one of them's fairly small. I would have liked to have known the motivation for the aliens, like what is their purpose? What's their goal?
Yeah.
They hinted at a few things, but nothing's really said. If there was some kind of reason for, just why? Like, can you give us something a little bit more concrete? They're mining, or they're harvesting bodies, or whatever it is, just something, as opposed to, okay, the aliens are invading. I think this is after having seen the movie a few times now. It's like, initially that doesn't really matter. It's so fun to watch that you're not super worried about that, but I would have liked to have seen something like that. And then a bigger thing, and maybe you can help me with this, I don't really understand the ending where he reset. So he takes in. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen this movie. We're going to talk about the very end. He hasn't, or he takes in presumably the ability from the Omega at the very end, right? And now he's the one who has the power completely, presumably, to reset time. So it gets reset again back to that moment, which is earlier than he was resetting before. So he was still on the flight over to there.
Yeah.
But the war's already over. So I'm guessing it's like him destroying the Omega has kind of rippled back through time to kill that thing, I guess. That's the only thing I can figure.
Yeah, I actually had the same concern, and I spoke to my spouse about it because this is one of my spouse's favorite movies, and he was the one who actually introduced it to me. And his theory is that by taking on the control of the Omega, he actually had control, and he decided where it was going to land, where time was going to land. So that was a conscious decision on the part of Gage to put himself back before all the people that he got to know in his squad died, before everyone who went out onto that beach died, but still have the aliens be defeated.
I guess, but wasn't he unconscious at that point? Like he basically died, and then he doesn't wake up until.
But he wasn't. His eyes were still open.
Yeah, I guess if he had the power.
Yeah.
At the end, but even still,
you're right. It's not well explained.
How did the Omega die in the past? Is the question, and like why was the war basically already over the day before?
Well, you know, time isn't a straight line; it's a wibbly wobbly.
I mean, that's ultimately with any kind of movie where you're playing with time. There's always some kind of hole like that. You can't. Really completely wrap everything up. It's just you're dealing with a paradox somewhere, and they wanted the war to be over. So I get it. And how much more do you want to drag it out? That's why it doesn't bother me too much, because it's not really critical to the entertainment experience of this movie. But it was definitely a question I had at the end. And also, I mean, it also leaves the question of, can he just reset time now? Or does he have to die again to reset it? Like, how does that work now?
Yeah.
Maybe when he has a child, that child will be able to reset time when they die or something.
Well, and that's what I think too. When he dies, it's all going to reset. So that was something. Those were questions that were left unanswered. So yes, I agree. That could have used a little bit more explanation.
Yeah. But for me, that was it. So are there other things that you would have changed or improved on?
I agree. I would have liked to have known more about the mimics. And actually, when I was watching the beginning of this, I think there could have been more information about what they were dealing with. We didn't really get an introduction to the aliens until they were on the beach. They talked about them.
Yeah.
The enemy, but we didn't really actually get an idea of what we were dealing with until they dropped them on the beach. And I think a little bit more would have been helpful. Just to show what the stakes really are. I mean, it was sort of implied, but I think a little bit more. And I think your point of wanting to know what the motivation was of the mimics would have been really great too. So I think just a little bit more world building in that area would have been helpful. I thought the whole ragtag team going off to kill the Omega at the end was a little bit too predictable. And then having them all die, also too predictable.
Yeah, you're kind of expecting that.
I wasn't crazy about that. This whole movie had been such a subversion of my expectations the whole time, and that felt disappointing. Oh, really? We're going to go down that route? So, and then what you just pointed out about how the rules about the time travel were a little fuzzy sometimes. Why did he come back before the battle, but after the Omega died? And, is he trapping the world in a time loop now so that it always resets every time he dies?
Right. Yeah. Is he immortal?
Yeah.
Is he gonna like get cancer and experience that death over and over and over and over again every day and never get out of it?
So I think just a little bit of cleanup there, I think would have been really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, something else I just thought of. It seemed like when they were on the beach, right, when they're doing their initial attack, and all those scenes, it seemed like the enemies were shooting like some kind of energy bombardment at them.
Okay.
But unless I missed something, there's like, how did they shoot energy? Like, was there some specific version of the enemy that like shot energy blasts or something? Because I never saw that. I feel like we missed something there, how they launch missile attacks.
I actually wasn't even paying attention to that, so good call.
Yeah, but that was it.
So did you find any themes? Yeah, and I agree. And I think these are small things, and they don't take away from the story at all.
Yeah.
Okay, themes.
The theme I got was spoken by Bill Paxton's character. Through readiness and discipline, we are masters of our fate.
Nice.
That's what I got. What about you?
I got 2 of them. I got never underestimate the value of a second chance.
Oh, that's a good one.
And every coward can find his courage.
Excellent.
But I like yours.
Yeah, I think those all work.
So as a writer, what do you take away from Edge of Tomorrow?
Man, that's a good question. For me, I think it's the setup and the transformation of the character. I've seen this in various writing books talking about writing. You want to start your character far away from where they're going to end up. So you have lots of room to play with the transition of that character over the course of your story. I think this represents that really well. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a real good one. I was so enamored with the subverted expectations that my takeaway is, how can I do that? How can I take something that seems, and it has to be done really carefully, right? Because there's a reason tropes are in place. People like tropes. People are comfortable with tropes, and they like variations on tropes, but the tropes still stay in place. So how to do it in a really careful way that still is delightful and not, annoying or so far off the beaten trope that it's no longer of any value to people. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you for joining us as we talked about the story told in the movie Edge of Tomorrow. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters and all our subscribers. We're so grateful for your support and your encouragement. The Stories Told podcast is available on multiple podcast platforms, and we thank you for liking and subscribing or following, depending on where you're listening. It may not be a big deal to you, but it means a lot to us. If you have a favorite book, movie, or TV series you'd like to suggest for the podcast, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and that link is in the show notes. You can find Michael Grayford at michaelgrayford.com and E.W. Barnes at 1000years.com, and those links are also in the show notes. Join us next time as we talk about the story told in the movie The Incredibles. Thanks so much, Mike. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on the Stories Told podcast.